Welcome back to another Community Day interview in which me and Matt Bell have had various discussions, and the video for the last one will actually be popping up on screen just now if you missed that. Lots of good interactions and questions were answered this time, so you're back for this time, right?
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thanks for having me on again.
Yep.
Hopefully we get a few more of your questions.
Of course. So, do you want to remind us really quickly what it is you do and what your responsibilities here are?
Sure. So I'm the European product manager for the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game. The fastest way to explain what I do is I'll take an idea someone shouts out in a meeting room, like, can we do this? And it's my job to figure out how, why, and when we're going to get it all sorted. And then I'll go through those steps from designing the product to getting it to official release. There's quite a few steps in between, but that's probably the fastest way to describe what I do here.
Let's begin with Dual Alliance, the best set ever made, right? Because that's where Dante was printed.
Yeah, he's still around.
He's still around, yes, especially with that new list, for example. The set itself was huge. It was a real format reset. Everything was just flipped on its head out of nowhere. And you guys have last year, taken a little bit of a different approach when it comes to set releases. So rather than having like this huge, like sort of big influential set like Raging Tempest or Duelist Alliance, you guys went a little bit more incremental. What's the differences for you, and how do you approach this? Like, do you prefer like the big sets, or do you see the game getting a little bit more healthier if things are done a bit more slowly? Like, what is it like you prefer to do?
Sure. So Duelist Alliance is a really interesting set. It's really fun when you get to work on projects like that, but the power level of the cards that ended up in Duelist Alliance were quite a big step forward from some of the previous sets. So that's when kind of like the entire format walked around Duelist Alliance. But there was a lot of variety in there, which I think helped. It wasn't just one deck, although Shador was arguably the best deck in the Duelist Alliance format. There was enough room in there for people to try stuff out. It's kind of interesting to take the long-term design approach that we have done over the last year, where you've got basically everything comes out a little bit slower. But in all honesty, whenever you get to work on a Duelist Alliance set, it's just so much fun because there's so many things that change and so many moving parts where you go, oh, I actually really like this, I want to try this, and you're kind of all over the place. So I actually personally prefer working on those sets, but it's not always possible without massively inflating the power level of the game.
Yeah, you can't really do it like every set, otherwise
Yeah.
you just collapses in itself because of how powerful things get, I
Yeah,
guess.
eventually people are like, you remember Duelist Alliance? Yeah, that was 3 months ago. Wow, that's terrible. You don't want to get to that point.
Recent edition of the recent reveal of the Master 05, Master Revisions 2020, you guys have basically like kept links in the game, and you've gone back and reverted the change with like fusions and synchros and stuff. Are we done with links, or will there be more link support for legacy decks, etc., etc.? Is there still more to come? What's like the take on that?
Sure. So I've got to stop saying sure. I keep doing that every time we answer one of these questions. I saw the comments on your channel last time. So we are going to continue supporting Link Monsters. It will be probably a little bit less in the initial sets as we move on, but in the long term we do plan to continue creating Link Monsters and bringing them to the game. Will we still have stuff for legacy support? You'll have to wait and see on that one.
What do you think, personally, from a competitive standpoint, was your biggest success of 2019?
So for me, the biggest success would have been the sheer scope of the amount of people attending events. That's gone up so much, and we're seeing so many of you traveling. It's got to the point now where we had to start investigating event caps because we just literally, for health and safety, fire reasons, we couldn't have any more people in venues. So that's been really great to see that many people showing up, and it's forcing us to then have to adapt and change to accommodate all of those players. But we're also seeing attendance up in regionals, we're seeing attendance up on the local level. Overall, the player base is actually going out and playing Yu-Gi-Oh! It's not just being played at the kitchen table. More people are going to their local stores, and to us that's been probably our biggest success of the year.
Growth of the game is something really important, and at least from my perspective, where I live, like, I can see like definitely more people showing up, more stores popping up. So yeah, that was it's huge to see like the record-breaking numbers like every event basically.
Oh yeah, we're just it's getting more and more ridiculous, especially anytime we do an event in Germany at this point. It's just wow, okay, this many people.
In terms of Yu-Gi-Oh! Types and the support for attributes and all different kinds of things like that, we see, I think, from at least a competitive standpoint, I think even just numerically, there's a huge gap between types. So for example, Yu-Gi-Oh clearly doesn't have enough dragons or warriors.
Are you sure? I think I can squeeze a few more in somewhere.
But we have very few, by comparison, like pyro monsters or sea serpents. Basically, is there a design reason behind this, or is there a plan to narrow the gap, or do you guys just kind of go with what feels good? What's the process there?
So, the R&D team is aware of it. Sometimes they'll develop something and go, okay, we want to have a good pyro theme, or they'll introduce that.
Like volcanics?
Yeah, like volcanics. Oh, that was actually that was my favourite GX deck, actually. And then you'll have other times where it would be more of a top-down approach, which would be like, right, here's our concept for the theme. Like danger monsters, the idea is that they're cryptics, they're very hard to find, so they're kind of like hide and seek, which was brilliant. And then, of course, the themes was going to be, well, whatever that monster actually would have been, like related to like Nessie, so it would be like that sort of thing. And then sometimes the design will go in that direction, rather than going, we care specifically that there's not enough plant monsters, for example. It'll be, well, where does this story for this monster type, like how does it fit together, and then they'll make it that way.
So it's a very sort of you begin with what seems interesting, what seems cool, and then kind of work from there, rather than pick a type and then go backwards kind of thing.
Yeah, it varies on project to project. Each of the members of R&D sort of design differently. Some prefer to go, all right, so what's our overall mechanic for this, and then they'll come backwards that way. Other people will be like, hey, this is what we want the cards to do, and then we'll fit something on top of that that makes sense. But each designer kind of approaches the problem a little bit differently.
Another popular format that's played in various other games is like the rotation out of sets and stuff like that. Yu-Gi-Oh has never had rotation, but what would be like your sort of perception of rotation? Like, what are the advantages you see in the current system of Yu-Gi-Oh, and I guess have you guys ever considered an alternative ever to be implemented?
So I'm personally against rotation in Yu-Gi-Oh. I know quite a few other games use it successfully. But one of the draws to Yu-Gi-Oh, I think, is that you can play cards from any era and bring them into your deck. So you suddenly get the random rare from a set that was like 5 or 6 years old that can suddenly become very relevant to something new. And having that level of discovery with the players is a lot of fun, which makes Yu-Gi-Oh quite unique. Rotation does give you the ability to develop your cards and then not worry about how some cards are going to interact with other cards later down the line. But again, there are so many other options out in the market that are already doing that. I think what we're doing for the Yu-Gi-Oh trading card game is the best for our audience and our players, because it's just a case of like, hey, grab your cards and build a deck with anything in the last 20 years.
Dual Devastator, great set. Everyone loves it. It's awesome to have just like the set kind of cards that you're going to be getting. And
some of the options probably make a bit more sense now that you saw the announcements.
Right, yes, for sure. Yeah, like there's a lot of synchro monsters that were very puzzling. But yeah, that's a good point. But in terms of like the kind of set cards that you have there and the ones that are pre-subscribed for us to buy, will we be seeing more of these in 2020? Can we expect this style to continue?
It's something we're definitely interested in looking into. We don't have anything to announce right now, but if you have feedback, by all means, if you put it in the comment section, I'll browse and give that a good read.
Sure.
I'll read some of the more rude and hateful stuff as well and just be like, ow.
There's a lot of cards that are currently only exclusively available in the OCG. Most prominently that I can think of right now was like Dragoon of Red Eyes, which is like hugely impactful in their format. Like hypothetically, like what is the process for bringing over a card like that? Like how do you decide, because it's not from a core set, so we don't really expect it. How do you decide like which set it goes into and how it gets imported, and like what's like the decision making there?
So there's a couple of different ways that we can, when we import these cards over, things we look at. Sometimes you've got a card that's so awesome you can almost build an entire product around it. For example, the Christian...
Needle Flamer. Hackley 5-Rex.
I can't even actually say it. I think only Kevin Tewart can actually pronounce the name correctly. And we're like, why did you write this? And he's like, because it's correct. So then you can create an entire product around that sort of concept. That's one way you can import the cards over. Other times they'll line up nicely with something that's going on in a core set, and then you can find them in the import slots that you find at the end of a booster. And do you want to know about the process itself of like what it takes to take a card from that market with like localization and stuff like that? Or was it more of like Was your question more of like how do you?
That's also interesting. Yeah, you could tell us a little bit about that. But I'm more concerned, like,
Sure.
how do you choose, like, for example, like Dragoon of Red Eyes, yes or no? Like, how do you decide that?
So we'll be keeping an eye on it for a while, seeing where things settle with it, and then we'll try and find a home for it. And is it a card that's good enough that we can build a product around it, or is it going to be something that will find a home in another set where it kind of has synergies with it? Like what we do, for example, if we do another box set, like the Dragon box set we did a few years ago, that was a good place to sort of we added new cards and we could sort of bring a few in like that. That would be something where it would like fit naturally. Other times, as I said, we might just think of like, actually, we've got these other assets. How do we group them together into a new concept?
And in terms of localization and such, like, how do you go about that?
So that involves a lot of people working on very tight deadlines. So essentially, the Japanese text will be translated to English. Then that English is used to translate into other foreign languages, and then everything gets checked by our guys, and then we actually send it off to print. The biggest problem is anytime there's a mistake, if you've already printed it, that's just a massive difficulty to actually get that changed or corrected. So everyone has to be sort of on every line, making sure they're checking stuff, and sometimes things doesn't quite go according to plan, so you get some of the weird German translations.
See, I know that Tree Toad does not translate from Japanese into totally awesome. Like, how did that one happen?
Sure. So sometimes
because that's not a translation. That's like, someone has to put like creative input in there. Right?
Yes. So sometimes you get puns, like lots of puns in Japanese that don't necessarily translate very well, and so we try and take the spirit of that, and it's like a case of like, all right, so how do you make that work? Would this be cool? Or we take a look at the name. There've been a couple of great names over the years, like Magical Something, which is actually really funny because that was kind of a concept where we built a card where this is what we wanted to do, and then it's like, all right, what's it going to be? We'll just put this as a placeholder name, and we thought it sounded so amusing to us in the office because it's just like so traditional, like magical something, whatever. We're like, that actually works. We want to use that as the name. And we're like, really? But like on Japan's side, they didn't get that, but like for us, it was a great joke.
And with Fur Hires, you changed the card text almost. Basically, you did. You changed like the way the PSET functions was changed.
Yeah. The person responsible for that would probably have to answer, but it was so everything was grammatically correct.
Yeah.
But yeah, I understand that for the PSET it was slightly different. It still functioned the way they were supposed to, but it was another opportunity where it's like, oh, I can have a bit of a play with this.
Okay. I've been to YCSs in America and had a really great time. But from a systematic point of view, it was very convenient because you were able to pre-reg on the Friday without handing in your deck list. Whereas in Europe, we have this pressure that if you want to pre-reg, you need to have your deck list in. Are we going to see a change to this? Could we see like maybe some leniency there for us in Europe?
So the OP team is really looking into ways to improve that overall experience. We know the registration requirements are a lot harsher. I can't announce anything at this time, but I know that they're definitely aware of the various issues with that, and they are working on ways to make that whole much better for you guys.
All right, well, this has been another segment in our interview series over here at Konami HQ. Big shout out to Matthew Bell and Konami for having me over and be able to bring this to you guys over YouTube. So leave your comments down below. As Matt said, we'll be prowling and taking a look at your feedback and your different sort of inputs that they'll have. So thanks again, everyone. Appreciate it. And we'll see you next time.
See you around.